Follow Paddy Power on Snapchat. The username is @ThePaddyPower, and we promise there won't be any boring snaps about gigs, the weather or the gym.
Hello and welcome to the Racing Post GAA Postcast. World champions Germany begin their World Cup defence at the Luzhniki Stadium in Moscow at 4 o'clock on Sunday, but the real action takes place 3,500 kilometres away at Dr Hyde Park when Galway travel to the Athlone Road to meet Roscommon in the Connacht football final. I'm your host Jack McCarran, stepping in for David Jennings, who is away on a well-deserved holiday, and later in the show we'll be joined by ex-Meath forward Joe Sheridan to preview the action out west. Before all that though, I'm joined on the line by Kilkenny legend and Emerald stalwart Aidan Taggy Fogarty and Mr Paddy Ahern from our friends at Paddy Power. Now Aidan, I know you're a hurling man through and through, but what sort of relationship will you have with the World Cup for the next month? Will you be sitting in your jocks in front of the TV all day Saturday, or are you a true Gael who will dismiss the tournament entirely as a waste of time?
I suppose, Jack, I'd be a true Gael to be fair, but that's not to say that I don't enjoy a good Saturday in my jocks watching soccer now. But yeah, look, I'd watch the soccer alright, but I'm a true GA man to be fair at heart.
And before we get your tips for the weekend's hurling action, who would you be fancying to win the World Cup?
Oh, sure, look, to be honest, I'd be looking at probably Brazil. I know they're probably favourites, and probably Neymar top scorer. It's hard to look past that. And I was actually fancying Spain, but the big controversy there yesterday about the manager, I'm not too sure about them now.
Yeah, it's a carnage in the Spain camp at the minute. What about yourself, Paddy? Would you have any interest in the soccer, or are you just true GAA?
I'll have plenty of interest in it, alright, yeah. I'll be watching a lot of it. I don't think I'll be watching the final because it looks like that the weekend of the final, I think the 14th, 15th of July, the final's going to clash with probably Super 8 games and possibly an All-Ireland hurling quarter-final as well. So I won't see a kick of the ball in the final, but I'm a sucker for all these kind of Tunisia, South Korea games and this kind of stuff. So I'll definitely enjoy them at 5 o'clock on a random Wednesday, you know, that kind of.
Yeah, that's where the best action is. But now with less action than usual this weekend in the hurling championship, I thought it was a good excuse to have a quick quarterly review of what we've seen so far in this year's championship. Aidan, I'll come to you first. From a player's point of view, would you prefer to have been playing now in this current structure, or did you prefer it the old way?
I think there's pros and cons really. I think as a player I would probably like to be playing in this kind of a structure. You know, you can train there for 3 or 4 weeks without matches. You're kind of wondering who you're going to be playing and things, and in this way you can actually play week on, week off, and it's all about playing matches. And I suppose on the other side of it as well, if you're trying to get into a team, like there's obviously places, there's a 20-man panel. You're probably, as a substitute for Kilkenny over the years, you know, I felt that obviously Brian Cody made changes maybe in the 50th or 60th minute, and you weren't going to get a game if you were a sub that day. But these days, you know, you get your chance. You're going to be coming on maybe after half time. You can make an impression. You could start the next day. So as a panel, I suppose, point of things, there's no really fixed team. There's 20, 22 guys who are actually always in the reckoning. So as a player, that's fantastic. And week in, week out, playing all these matches is super. But I suppose on the flip side of that, I'm outside the county scene now, and the club scene is just gone to pot. There was a club month for April, and some counties adhered by it, and some counties didn't. We were supposed to have 2 games, and we had 1 game in April, and now we're literally don't know when we're playing until either Kilkenny win or Kilkenny get bet. So obviously it's going to be around the August time before we have another game. So there's guys hanging around for training, and we don't really know what we're training for. So look, there's pros and cons to it really as a player's point of view.
And when this new system was brought in, there was a lot of talk that they were doing it for the club player, but clearly that hasn't happened. So
no, well look, my thinking of it, like, it was brought in for the club thing. I thought it was actually a knee-jerk reaction to the Super 8s, to be fair, because once the Super 8s were fixed, then all the hurling snobs, I suppose, kind of got on their high heels and said, what about the hurling? And they fixed this for a club championship, and they made more inter-county games. So that doesn't make sense, fixing more inter-county games, and you're trying to fix the club scene. So I don't know, I think the CPA guys, I think need to talk to the GPA guys there on that one, and try to come to a realistic kind of a realistic, I suppose, going forward kind of a plan really. But I suppose, look, you look at the GA, it's about money, it's about bringing in the big crowds. I suppose at club level are not going to do it. And at inter-county level, it's super, but definitely the clubs are suffering. And I feel down the line, maybe not in 2 or 3 years' time, but probably in 8 or 9 years' time, the inter-county scene will suffer because guys won't hang around. The inter-county guys come from the club scene, the best of the clubs. And if lads aren't around, to actually hurl for the clubs. They'll go off travelling, they'll get jobs in different countries, they'll go up in Dublin, they won't bother coming down for training because they don't know when they're training. It's going to have a knock-on effect for the inter-county scene in probably 8 or 9 years' time.
And then, Paddy, coming to you from the punter/bookmakers angle, like, have you seen an increased level of action on the hurling championship this year? Has it been more profitable for punters, more profitable for your good employers, or just the overall scene of things at the minute? How has it affected?
Yeah, I mean, definitely turnover has been boosted anyway, because I mean you have all these really high profile games coming thick and fast. I think the one thing that punters, I mean, it's the same amount of TV games that is on, but there's more, really high profile games. So like a lot of the football, like the best football games this year, nobody's seen them on television, and that would kind of affect turnover a small bit. But in terms of like people just being interested, people are going to games as well, and people are definitely punting a lot more on it. It's the way they have it done. It's like a lot of people are, and the football people have kind of been given out at the start of the year saying that, we're missing all these games, we're missing Carlow beating Kildare, and we're missing these kind of Ulster semi-finals that other people, that on most years you would have seen. But I think people are going to kind of roll back on that in the next couple of weeks, because after this weekend you've got 7 hurling games left that's going to be televised for the rest of the year. So hurling is really going to take a back seat. Like I kind of mentioned those All-Ireland quarter-finals as well. Like they will probably be on television, but they're stuck in a weekend, the first weekend of the Super 8s football as well. So after this weekend, you'll have your provincial finals. There'll be huge interest in that, but hurling is really going to take a back seat and football is going to take over. To be honest though, in terms of interest for punters, in terms of a championship spectacle, you can't really complain about what we've had for the last month, because we've had they've been played like knockout games. They've been thick and fast. We've got the couple of draws, which will obviously keep our coffers boosted as well. But I think for punters, for ourselves, for everybody, it's better than it used to be, innit?
And lads, before we move on to the weekend action, I just want to get your thoughts on the outright market. Now that we've seen each of the teams that remain in the championship a couple of times, are Galway, they're obviously still the team to beat, but Aidan, have you seen anything that suggests that there's a team out there capable of beating Galway?
Yeah, well, look, Galway are the obvious choice. They're physically strong, and they've been dominating the Leinster Championship to date. And obviously they're in a Leinster final now. But I think the thing with Galway is the only place you might beat them is actually in Croke Park. And that's where, at the end of the day, that's where the real silverware is. And I mean by that in Croke Park is like, I have a feel maybe if a Cork get through and run them around Croke Park, play the ball to hand, play it through the lines, and it probably won't be as physical out. Galway are very physically, but in Croke Park it's a small bit different, as in you have a little bit more time on the ball. There's a lot more space to cover. They're playing Skehill in the goal up in Salt Hill. They were pumping the ball into the full forward line. They were physically dominating every team. And in that terms, I think the likes of maybe a Cork running game could affect a Galway team in Croke Park. Now, in saying that, you look at Limerick, the way they're coming through, they can actually mix it both ways. They're strong, they're physical, and they can play the short ball, and they have great forwards as well. So as Galway are favourites, I would think maybe a team like Cork or even possibly Limerick that play a nice running game and can kind of mix it both ways can upset Galway in Croke Park.
Paddy, could you maybe just give us a quick show of betting on the outright market there, please?
Absolutely, I can. Yeah, Galway are 6 or 5 favourites. Limerick and Cork are joint second favourites at 9-2. Clare 13-2. Kilkenny are 11-2. Wexford are 22-1, and then we have Westmeath and Carlow, who are still technically in it. They're both 1,000-1.
Now, Paddy, this is going to sound a bit biased coming from me, as I'm a Kilkenny man. Taggy is also a Kilkenny man, so it's a Kilkenny-dominated podcast today. But just listening to those prices, is there still some juice in that Kilkenny price? We saw what they done to Wexford last weekend. They came back from 9 points down. The never say die attitude. I know it's a cliche, but is there some juice left in that price? Yeah,
they are going to learn from Pearse Stadium, definitely. I think people underestimated that, even beforehand and after the game, what a huge game that was for Galway. It was Galway's first home game in the championship for 10 odd years. They hadn't beaten Kilkenny in a big game. That was a massive game for Galway, and they performed as you would expect with that much on the line. Like, they were really, really brilliant that day, but Kilkenny kind of got it all wrong. Like, I would say that in Croke Park you're going to see a very different Kilkenny forward line. I think there's going to be a lot more size there. Like, they wanted to be reliant on TJ and Walter Walsh that day, who both Garage McInerney just kind of followed TJ a good bit from midway through the first half onwards, and he kind of just marked him. I wouldn't say marked him out of the game, but he did a fine job on him. Like, I would think the type of Liam Blanchfield type players, I think there's going to be a lot more size in that Kilkenny forward line. I don't know if there's going to be much room for, we'll say, the likes of Luke Scanlon, maybe even Mossy Keown. You're going to have Richie Hogan back there, so I think Kilkenny they're definitely going to be closer than they were in Pearse Stadium. I'm not so sure where they are in terms of when those young fellas, like, they got a bit of a land that day as well. So the likes of the Mossy Keowns, the likes of the John Donnellys and Marcy, like, they're good hurlers, but they're pretty young, and they're kind of having to learn on their feet. I'm not too sure in big games in Croke Park are they going to hit the ground running, as you would say. Like, those Cork lads have a little bit of experience from last year, and those Galway lads certainly have a lot more of it.
And then final point on this topic, I just want to get both your thoughts on the Player of the Year markets at this stage. As I said, we've seen all the teams play on a couple of occasions, so some players have really laid a marker down for hurler and young hurler of the year. Paddy, if you could just give us a quick show of betting and then maybe your thoughts, and then Aidan will come to you.
Yeah, no problem. Joe Canning's favourite at 5-1, TJ Reid is 13-2, Conor Cooney 8-1, Daithí Burke's 11-1, Patrick Horgan is 12-1, Conor Whelan 16s, Tony Kelly 16s, Cian Lynch 16s, 18-1 bar. So
yeah, Paddy, we'll come to you first. Player of the year, where's the value, and do you have a strong fancy?
Yeah, I think the thing about, like, it's a bit different for young hurler of the year, but hurler of the year, it's real top end. So, like, there's a good chance that you mightn't puck a ball until a provincial final, and then you play 3 decent games, and you'll end up with hurler of the year kind of handy enough. The one little bit of value I thought around was possibly David Burke for Galway. So, like, he hasn't really, within Leinster, he hasn't had to come to the fore all that much. Like, he's played pretty well, but he's let Conor Cooney do the score, and he's let Daithí Burke kind of look towering at full back. But, like, where it's really going to suit him is in the cauldron of Croke Park, when, in tight games, or even like the All-Ireland final last year where he's popping up and scoring 4 points from play. He's a big game player, and I think if he had, like, 3 top games toward the end of the year, which you can definitely see him do, then I think there's a bit of juice in the prices that are around on him.
And Aidan, what about yourself? Who's caught the eye so far this season?
Yeah, look, I suppose he made a great point there. It kind of depends on who's going to get to Croke Park and who's going to get probably to the final stages, All-Ireland final stage. I suppose if you're looking at it now, if you're taking it as by merit now, Cian Lynch for me has been exceptional for Limerick. He's pulling the strings there at midfield. He's he's probably getting nominated every day for man of the match, but he is definitely Limerick's top player. And if Limerick get through to an All-Ireland final or an All-Ireland semi-final in Croke Park, I think Cian Lynch should be super up there. He had a bit more space. He loves to run at the fences. His skill level is top notch. And for me at the minute, Cian Lynch. But I suppose it all does depend. And he can be playing exceptionally well up to now, but really it does depend on provincial final, semi-final, final. And even at a semi-final, final stage, if you have 2 great games, then you can actually come to the fore. So it does depend on, I suppose, the team getting to an Ireland final on that back. So if you're looking at Galway side of it, which you'd imagine there would be an Ireland final, I would actually be going for Daithí Burke, full back. I think he's absolutely playing brilliant. Last year he had an exceptional year as well. This year he's really lording it as well. So I'd be going for Daithí Burke for full back for a Galway side of things. And for young hurler of the year, I suppose Flanagan is standing out as well for Limerick. But it all depends on which team actually gets to an Ireland final. You can call all these things all you want, but it all depends on which team gets to an Ireland final.
Well, on that note then, we'll move on to the weekend action. And at 2 o'clock on Sunday at a sold-out Cusack Park in Ennis, 2 of the standout teams in this year's championship will meet when Clare host Limerick. Paddy, could you just give us some prices and handicaps on the game, please?
Yeah, Clare 5-4, the draw is 9-1, Limerick are 5-6, Clare +1 at home, 10-11, 10-1 the handicap draw, and Limerick -1 is even money.
Now, Aidan, I'll come to you first. Last week's win for Clare over Tipperary Was it their most important win since their All-Ireland win in 2013? The old cliche again, Joe, they won when playing badly, but they won in the end, got over the line, and now they go into this game with their tails up. How important was that win?
Yeah, no, I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think it has been one of the most important wins for Clare. I think we spoke about last week on the podcast that we're saying, is this Clare team going to actually kick on and become a team that's actually going to be in contention for an Ireland final? And to actually beat Tipperary in Semple Stadium was a huge, I think it was 93 or I don't know, it was whatever year it was anyway, since they beat them last. And it was kind of a monkey off their back. And they did play poor. And I suppose it was kind of more Tip's form that allowed them to win, really, more so than Clare kicking on. Like Tipperary left Clare in the game, and the 4 points before half time for me were crucial. They just kept them ticking away, and then the bit of luck that Tipperary always had in the last couple of minutes in the last couple of games actually ran out, and they hit the post, went up, and Clare obviously scored a goal to put them in front and to win the match. And if McCarthy had to drive that ball wide, Tip probably would have won the match. It's such fine lines. But on that side of things, Clare would always have lost them games, and they hung in and they won the game, not playing exceptionally well, but to beat a Tipperary team in Semple Stadium is a huge farm, and that'll give them a huge boost of confidence going forward. And they were beginning to play better in the last 10 minutes. They were actually coming together. Podge Collins was a huge introduction for them, really brought a bit of life to them and something different. So I think if they sharpen up their shooting and take their tackling level down, don't be giving away much frees, I think they're in real contention to take on Limerick this weekend.
You mentioned Podge Collins there. He's had a tough few years between injury and, of course, he made the crazy decision to play football instead of hurling for one season. But as a corner forward yourself, how important the confidence he'll take from last week? He looked to have a bit of his swag back. Could we be seeing him back to his best?
Yeah, no, it was huge. And as we said, look, Podge had a bad injury. He done the cruciate there a couple of years ago. Never really kicked on from that. Decided to play football, took a year out. So all these things were hampering his performance. But last weekend, I think it's a breath of fresh air. He was nominated to get man of the match. He just kind of thrown off all the shackles and said, "Look, I'm going for it." And I think Podge Collins is a huge, and it makes that Clare team tick. All the balls go through him. He's lively. He's kind of has the run of the ground, really. By the sounds of things, he just comes out to half-hour line, makes breaks. He stays inside, and he's a real go-to man for Clare. And I think going forward, he could be real prospect for Clare. Obviously, we know the talent he is. He's lost there at the end of the day and has an Ireland medal in his back pocket. But he was lacking. He was dipping in form. So I think last week's performance will really bring him on.
Paddy, before we move on to Limerick, I just want to get your thoughts on Clare. Do you see them as genuine All-Ireland contenders?
I'm not so sure about All-Ireland contenders. 2013 was kind of that was the weirdest year of hurling that we're going to remember, I'd say, for the last in 20 years. It was just kind of a crazy sort of a year, and they just came with a bit of momentum and picked it up. They have a very, very good side. I just don't see them. I wouldn't see them troubling Galway later on in the year. This weekend is completely different. I think this is a huge game for them down in Ennis. Ennis is worth 2 or 3 points to them every day they go out. The thing about them, the thing that's really solid about them, I think, in the last couple of games is the amount of chances that they're creating. They're putting up big scores, but if you looked in the first half of the last day, Tony Kelly put 3 if not 4 balls wide, all kind of on the right hand side. Peter Duggan was a little bit selfish with 2 balls that he had that were, well, one of them was certainly was definitely going to be a goal. The second one was a very good goal chance as well, so they could have even scored more than they did against Tip. They're creating a lot of scoring chances. Ennis is going to be a big help to them. I'm not too sure how they're going to go for the rest of the year. I think they're going to be very, very tight in this one. I'm not sure if they're going to shade it. I actually think it's going to be so tight that I'd probably favour the draw here, really. I mean, if you look back at that kind of league quarter-final where they played in Ennis as well, it took 3 different periods. It took the 65 competition to actually separate them. So I think it's going to be... I think Limerick in a neutral venue would be a couple of points better than them. I think they should just about deserve to be slight favourites this weekend, but I think the draw is a massive runner.
But you mentioned the draw as a runner there, and when you look at the scores both teams have put up so far in the Munster Championship, it's crazy how close they are. Limerick against Cork scored 28 points, they drew. Clare scored 121 against Cork. Clare scored 227 against Waterford. Limerick scored 226, and against Tip they both scored 123. So what price is a draw there? Because that sounds like a very tempting bet.
Yeah, definitely. The draw is 9-1. It's kind of thrown in like that would be kind of the generic price for a hurling draw. But I definitely think it's big. I definitely think it's big for this weekend. You might even get bigger on the exchanges and that kind of stuff. I don't know for how much money, but like 9-1, there's I would say there's very little margin in 9-1 for us in that particular bet. And I would say like the weather, I think it's not going to be awful down in Ennis. So I would say even a draw, half-time draw, full-time, I mean, that's going to be around at 40-50 to 1, and I think that's a runner as well.
Absolutely. Aidan, just moving on to Limerick quickly. This hype that's surrounding Limerick at the minute, I don't know if it's hype, but there's a lot of talk about Limerick, and it reminds me almost of back in 2014 when they got to a Munster final. They were massively fancied, then they got to the All-Ireland semi-final, lost to Kilkenny. This ultimately disappointed on the big days. Is there something different in this Limerick team that you see that they can maybe get over the line this time, or is the same hangover going to happen with Limerick again?
No, I think they're a little bit of a different side, and I think John Kiley has brought that bit of an edge to him. He seems to be like a very grounded man, he's a very shrewd manager, and I think what he's brought to him and what Limerick have been kind of got out of the under-21s is that kind of air of cockiness and that kind of air of like, we're Limerick. We're not building for next year. We're not building for the year after. We're here to take on this championship, and we're good. We believe that we're good enough and we're strong enough to actually get to an Ireland final and compete. And I think that's the difference. John Kiley has brought that, because over the years in my time, we had a Limerick team that won 3 in a row as well. And they failed to flatter to deceive when they got to the senior grade. And I just always felt that maybe it was a county board or a managerial kind of thing that was missing to gel them all together. And I think John Kiley has actually brought that together and brought a real belief to him. And the fact they actually have won the 321s in a row and that they're going so well in the championship now, I think they have a real belief and a cockiness that they can take on anyone. And obviously they're going down to Ennis on Sunday and it's going to be a titanic battle. But I think that they really think that this could be their year, and they're not waiting around for anyone else. And and they're strong, and they're physically big, and they've had to find a few excellent hurlers like Flanagan there. Super there for the league so far. Graham Mulcahy seems to have some sort of an edge to him as well. Garrod Hegarty, Kyle Hayes is only 19 years of age, Tom Morrissey. These lads, they're between 19 and 23. A real bit of youth to them. These guys are actually used to winning these big games. And I think they're going to go down to Ennis. I just fancy them slightly because they are the farm team. I think it's a huge game from them. If they win this game, it could really bring them on to a Munster final and take on whoever's going to be at the other side of it. And I just think they're like the Limerick of before that I used to go, they'd go so far and we probably knew we were going to beat them. This team, I think any team is going to take them on really know they're up against it. So mentally, they're in a way better place than they would have been a couple of years ago.
Yeah, they seem to have a real edge about them. Now, lads, time for a couple of predictions. So, man of the match prediction and first goal scorers. Paddy, we'll come to you first.
Yeah, Taggy just touched on him there. Graham Mulcahy he's really kind of bought into what John Kiley wants off, especially that Limerick forward line and around midfield. The work rate is unreal from all those 6 forwards. They're all like the block and the hook and the harry, and you've seen it in every single game, and Mulcahy is probably one of the best at it. It's hard to believe he's only 28 as well. I actually thought he was older. He scored 4 points against in the first day against Tip. He got the fortuitous goal the other day, but like he is adding the scoring and he's adding the work rate. So I think he's a decent enough price for man of the match at 16s. He's playing quite well. First goal scorer, I would probably go with John Conlon. He's spending a good bit of his time up in the full forward line. He'll be in on Mike Casey, but like he'll relish that battle. He kind of loves the physical battle, and they'll be raining ball down on top of him. So John Conlon, I think he's around 15 to 2 he's actually 9 to 1 for first goal scorer. And
Taggy?
Yeah, I talked about earlier on for being a hurler of the year if we get to another Ireland is Cian Lynch. I think he's going super all year long. He's kind of a lazy attitude approach looking at him, but by God, he has some skills, and he's a link man for Limerick, and he scores 2 or 3 points a game, and he's been in contention for man of the match for nearly every game this year, I think, so far. So I'd be going for him for my man of the match, and for first goal, I'd probably be going for Seamus Flanagan. I think Limerick are going to target that Clare full backline of O'Connor, McInerney and Brown, and I just think with Seamus' size and the way he's going in the matches, I think he's a good bet for first goal.
Good stuff, lads. Also on Sunday at 2 p.m, Waterford finished their campaign in what is essentially a dead rubber versus Cork in Thurles. Paddy, could you give us some odds and handicaps on that game and your thoughts on John Myler's team?
Yeah, it's 1-6 Cork, 14-1 the draw. Wexford are 5-1. It's a 7-point handicap at the minute with Cork 10-11. The handicap draws 12-1. Waterford are even money. Like the biggest question with this game is just going to be motivation. Like there's no way if everything was on the line that it would be this kind of handicap. I know Waterford were poor last week, but like I think that Stephen O'Keefe slight mistake just kind of knocked them for 6 in that match. Like they were never really able to get back into the game after that. It's there's two ways of looking at this game. One, Waterford are out. How are they going to approach it? What kind of team are they going to play? Are they going to kind of show up at all? And the second way is it is going to be probably Derek McGrath's last game, I'd say. So they are probably going to. There's a good chance they'll want to come with a performance, and they'll want to kind of show Derek what they were missing maybe last week and what they were missing against Clare, and kind of thank him for all the work he's done. I think they might come with a bit of a performance in the first half, but I think too much is on the line for Cork. I think they're going to approach it in a pretty kind of professional manner. I could see them running away with it in the second half.
Taggy, just on that point, I want to come to you on this one. These guys are elite athletes, the Waterford players, but it must be so hard to motivate yourself for a game like this. I know Paddy's saying it's Derek McGrath even's last game. It's probably Tony Brown's last game. How would you approach a game like this if you were still playing at the highest level?
Yeah, look, it is so hard because, look, there's nothing at stake for Waterford. Now, I think Cork, in saying that, needs to get result all the same, to make sure they're in a Munster final. But on a Waterford point of thing, it is going to be so hard as a player to motivate yourself. And I think the things that they're going to be using is, Derek McGrath won't say it himself, but the players will be talking between themselves and they'll realise that this possibly is Derek McGrath's last year. He's been there for 5 years. He's stuck with the players. He seems to be kind of a father figure for some of these guys as well. So I think that the players really, really like him, and they have a genuine kind of respect for him. And I think that will be a factor. And I suppose also the Brick Welch side of things as well. We don't know how long more Brick Welch is going to go. Is it going to be his last year? Who knows? No, he's played very well, but look, he's 35, 36 years of age now as well on that side of things. So I think that's going to be a motivational factor. And the fact is this Waterford team going to be known as maybe a team that flopped or never achieved their potential kind of thing? Now, I know there's a lot of young guys there, but for this team and management alone, they don't want to be remembered for that. So I think they're going to be using all those things going into this match. And I think Paddy touched on it there. I think they'll be skin and hair flying for the first couple of minutes, and they'll give it their all for a half an hour. But I just feel Cork might just get on top, score 3 or 4 points on the trot, and suck the energy out of a Waterford team. And it's a terrible way for Waterford to go out with all the injuries and everything that they had. But I just feel that Cork can kick on, and the handicap I think is -7. If Cork are going to win, I think it's going to be more of 7 points.
Well, very nice of you there not to correct me, because of course Tony Brown will not be playing for Waterford on Sunday. Brick Welch is of course who I meant, so much appreciated, Taggy. But just you're saying that, Joe, the Waterford players will want to give a performance for the potentially departing manager and some of the players. So in that case, it's 5-1. Like, I just see 5-1 in a Munster Hurling Championship game, and I just can't take my eyes off it, Paddy. It just seems huge. I know, obviously, reflects the circumstances, but surely there's a juice in that.
Yeah, it might well be. A lot of this is kind of going to depend on teams that come out as well. Like, I mean, I'm pretty sure that a lot of those Waterford guys who have been injured for the last couple of weeks, I don't think there's anyone to come back in. But you'd never know. Like, you might see a 15 in Waterford. That's kind of what happened with the Tip game as well. So earlier on in the week we were 9 points, and then you actually look at the team and you think there's no way it's a 9-point handicap. You end up going back to 4 or 5. There's a chance that that's going to happen with Waterford as well. I think they're still going to look like a pretty... I still think it's one of those where, as Taggy kind of said, like, if you see Cork winning, there's a good chance a lot of people are going to see Cork winning by more than 7. And then people are looking at the Waterford match price and thinking, geez, 5-1 is big. So somebody has to be right. Like, they kind of have to correlate one way or the other. So there's kind of 2 ways of looking at it. If it is going to shorten anyway, I'd say it might go towards Waterford's side. But I wouldn't like, we'll say, in a somewhat dead rubber with a team with kind of nothing to play for, I wouldn't like them to be holding my money personally.
Okay, lads, we're just running out of time a small bit here, so I'm just going to have to push you for predictions. Aidan, we'll come to you first. Your match prediction, your man of the match prediction, and your first goal scorer prediction, please.
Yeah, I'll keep it short. We're running out. Man of the match, Darragh Fitzgibbon, flying it for Cork in midfield. He's scoring 1 or 2 points a game. Super hurler and really on top form. And my first goal, it's hard to patch Patrick Horgan, takes the freeze. He scored a goal, I think, in the second game there as well. He's always in around the square for the breaks. Prolific goal scorer. So Darragh Fitzgibbon for man of the match and Patrick Horgan for first goal.
And Paddy?
Yeah, just on man of the match. I don't think we're going to be able to offer it because it's not on television. But first goal scorer, DJ Foran, is playing quite well. I thought he got a few chances in the last couple of games for Waterford. I think if they start well, there's a bit of juice in his price at 14-1. My best bet in the match coupon, I think if Waterford are to start well, I think there's an angle back in Waterford half-time, Cork full-time. I think that's around the 5-1 mark. Okay,
lovely stuff, lads. My thanks to Aidan Fogarty for joining us to talk about the hurling. Coming up next, we'll be joined by Joe Sheridan to preview the Connacht football final.
Success ain't earned, it's bought. That's why at Paddy Power, we paid the big bucks for the best tech nerds in the world to develop our new, fastest ever app. Download the new app from the App Store or Play Store now. 18+, begambleaware.org.
Welcome back to the Racing Post GAA Postcast. I'm your host, Jack McCarran, and joining me on the line now is ex-Meath footballer Joe Sheridan. Joe, in part one, we looked at the overall state of the hurling championship so far, and I just wanted to get your thoughts on the state of play in football. Is there anything you've seen so far that suggests that we may have a team other than the Dubs lifting Sam Maguire come the end of the season, or is it just going to be same old boys in blue on the hill?
Yeah, no, look, I think Dublin are just sort of easing themselves into the championship. I haven't really had to do too much, obviously, with Leinster not being as strong as the other provinces this year. I do see a couple of teams that will probably put it up to Dublin as we go along. Obviously, the likes of Kerry, who had a good win against there in the semi-final, and they'll be very confident going into the final there against Tipperary. I'd be looking at Galway, obviously my Galway, just tipping away nicely. I see them win on Sunday, and obviously moving on into the Super 8s and hopefully can get a nice run. Other than that, like, you're looking at, out of them two teams that are going to push Dublin, you're looking at like probably Donegal, Monaghan probably disappointed, Tyrone have disappointed as well. Mayo, if they get a run in the qualifiers and get some confidence back up, get their key players back, then they might have a chance to maybe upset the cart. But I don't see them really pushing Dublin. But it's just there's no team really blowing anyone away at the minute. Watching the games, but it's probably, as everyone is saying, it's probably Dublin's to lose at this stage. But I'm still very confident the way Galway are playing that they're going to have a big sort of say in the end of the championship this year.
Before we move on to Galway, Paddy, could you just give us some outright prices on the championship at this stage?
Yeah, it's 4-6 Dublin, 9-2 Kerry, 12-1 Mayo, 12-1 Donegal, 9-1 Galway, Tyrone are 18-1 and 33-1 Bar.
And Paddy, if you were to have £20 of my money on the championship at this stage, where would it be going?
Yeah, if I wouldn't be putting the 20 quid on the 4-6. I think it is absolutely the most likely winner, and there probably isn't a hell of a lot of margin in that price for us. If I had my 20 quid, I suppose you might just go on the potential side for Kerry. They're probably the only team I think that there's a little bit of an unknown with them. We don't know how the likes of Clifford, the likes of Sean O'Shea and Micheál Burns, these guys, we don't really know how good they are yet in the context of senior inter-county top level championship. Like they looked really, really good against Clare. You're probably backing a bit of potential with Kerry that they're going to improve the next couple of years. At 9-2, they're probably the only ones I'd be looking at. Okay, then moving on, at 4 o'clock at Dr. Hyde Park on Sunday, we have a repeat of last year's Connacht final as defending champions Roscommon take on Galway. Now, there's a sense of deja vu surrounding this fixture, as far as I can see. This time last year, Galway came into the game on the back of a famous win over Mayo, but were beaten by the better side on the day. And this year, Galway are coming in as supposed All-Ireland contenders, and Roscommon are once again coming in under the radar. Joe, I'll come to you first. Are we in for a shock on Sunday, or are you sticking with your boys, Galway?
No, I'm very confident about Galway this weekend. When you look at Galway, they sort of gradually building and get better over the last couple of years. They've got a system in place. The defensive setup is fantastic this year. They've only conceded like 2 goals, I think, all year. One was in the league final against Dublin. And I was very impressed with them against Sligo. You know, it was a professional win. You know, a massive score, 4-24. Against the Sligo team that aren't that bad. You know, some good players, and you know they literally done a job that everyone's expecting them to. But they're the games that, you know, some of the teams who have come through over the last couple of years, they've lost them because they probably weren't as good as teams thought they were. You know, I think the only thing with Galway, maybe they can be maybe too defensive sometimes, and it slows up their play into the attacking side of the pitch. You know, but I can't see Roscommon's defence being able to hold them out. That Roscommon's defence, probably they're not as strong, physically strong as Galway across the pitch. They have some fantastic players, and the thing with Roscommon is obviously beating Galway last year in the Connacht final. They'll have the confidence that they can go out and beat them. They've had probably, you know, over the last couple of years, that the team has been quite settled with the same probably 10 or 11 players playing. I see the same team has been selected from the Leitrim game. You know, and they'll have built confidence. Obviously, everyone's building Galway up, so they're coming in as massive underdogs. So they're going to be lying in the grass, you know, letting everyone build Galway up and hoping they can do what last year again. But I can't really see it. You know, I think Galway probably will have too much for them, and no disrespect to Roscommon, but I could see it being sort of up on 5 or 6 points.
Joe, from a player's perspective, like Kevin McStay named his Roscommon team last weekend, like a week before the game. Is there any significance in that, or why do you think he'd make such a call rather than the usual Wednesday or Thursday?
Yeah, maybe he's just really confident in the team he has, and he'd no need. You know, I like it actually. I prefer the managers put the team there rather than hanging around, naming it late on a Friday, Saturday. There's too much talk. Who'll be playing? Who won't be playing? You know, and sometimes it does. But again, the players' heads, because you know it's not out there. Everyone's asking who's the team, who's playing this. If you just put it out there, teams know, and by Tuesday, Wednesday, the talk of the team has been stopped, and it's all about the game then. So I like it, to be fair. It shows that he's confident. He's put the team out, and he's looking forward to the game, and he dug his heels in with the game getting into Hyde Park as well, you know, so they weren't lying down. Roscommon will be very, very, very well versed for this game, and you know, they'll get stuck into Galway, and even just with the game being left in Hyde Park, it's maybe just showing a bit of intent of what might come for Galway on Sunday as well.
Paddy, there's obviously a lot of talk about Galway this year, and they're obviously well fancy for the championship. You mentioned the prices there, but Roscommon seem to have built a real bond in the last few seasons under Kevin McStay. Can you see a shock on the cards on Sunday, or are you as confident in Galway as Joe is?
No, I definitely can. Like, I have to say with McStay, like he's what he's doing down there is he's playing a blinder. I mean, he got so much stick during last year's league, and like his first time there, he was getting into the neck from all sides. But Joe touched it there, and he's absolutely right. I think the likes of him naming the team last Sunday, that's great, because it's shown that he thinks they've all the work done. He's saying to his players, he's given every one of them a job. Like, they know exactly what's expected of them now in the week coming up to the game. None of them are kind of wondering, am I going to start? Like everybody on that, like everyone who's starting on that 15 for Roscommon is going to know their job this weekend. The thing about it as well, that not a lot of people, like, this is it is a Connacht final or whatever, but this is a huge game, because you kind of see the likes of Tyrone, and you're seeing other teams dropping off. So like, there's an argument that we could be seeing Galway, who are potentially in the top 4 in the country. I'd say they are now, and I'd say Roscommon could be close enough to top 6. So like, there's a lot on the line here. Roscommon, both teams have improved a lot from last year as well, which is another thing that kind of not a lot of people are talking about. If you look at that Roscommon team from last year, it looks similar to the 15, but on the bench that they didn't have last year, they have Cathal Craig back. They have the 3 Dailies from Pearse's back. They had Ultan Harney, I think he's injured now, but he was an addition to the panel as well. And Kieran Lennon was an addition to the panel. Both of them are injured, but it just kind of shows that they can have players injured now, and they still have a really, really strong bench. He dug his heels in, as Joe said, to get the game in the Hyde. I think they're going to be right up for it. I think it's going to be a very tight game. On their best form, Galway should win it. But there has been that just small air of complacency that you'd see in Galway. Like, each year it is kind of looking like they're getting rid of it a small bit. There was no sign of it for the league. We actually haven't seen any sign of it in 2018, but there are the niggles from that Tip game in 2016 and the Roscommon game in 2017 last year. I think it's going to be a tight game. I think Galway might win it, but I think the 3-point handicap is fair, and if I was backing any side of it, I'd probably back the plus Roscommon.
Yeah, could you just remind us of the prices and handicaps there again, Paddy?
Absolutely, yeah, I can indeed. It's 5-2 Roscommon for the match, 8-1 the draw, Galway 4-9. Roscommon plus 3, 10-11. The handicap draw is 9-1, and Galway minus 3 is 11-10.
And Joe, what's your angle approaching this game? If you were having a bet, where is your money going?
Yeah, I was trying to look at it. Like, it is a Connacht final, as Paddy was saying, and I really fancy Galway here. I just think they're getting better and better as I spoke for, and I'm beating their drum, and I will be until I'm told to shut up. But I think that the -3 is at 11. I think that's a massive price at 11-10, and I'd be really fancying that. I'm going to give Roscommon the respect not to go anymore, but I think Galway can really test that handicap, and 11-10 I think is a fantastic price, and this is one of my bets of the year, I think, on Galway at -3.
One of the bets of the year from Joe Sheridan there, so bold words. We'll be watching that one closely and playing it back next week, whether it wins or loses, Joe. Paddy, what about yourself? How would you approach this game from a betting perspective?
Yeah, the one market I kind of liked in it, I saw that there was there's halftime handicaps around as well. So I think the first half is going to be pretty cagey. I think it's going to be a tight game. You can back Roscommon +2 at halftime. I think that's a decent bet. Like, I think Roscommon, like, both teams have really strong benches now as well, so it's not like, I don't think it's going to be the last 15 minutes where Galway just empty a bench and pull away. I think Roscommon's bench is actually just as, especially in the forwards, is going to be just as strong. So I just think it's going to be tight for the 70 minutes. I think especially in Roscommon, the effort that they got to get the game into the Hyde, the way they performed last year, I think it's a very, very similar situation in the sense that Galway have had to beat Mayo and kind of trot through a semi-final, and Roscommon would have only been, since that league final, this is the only game they would have kept their eyes on, whether it was going to be Mayo or Galway. I think they're going to be right up for it. Like I say, I think Galway might just have that little bit too much class, but I wouldn't be comfortable enough backing a -3. I think Roscommon will stay within that.
Okay, and Joe, we're going to come to you now for your man of the match and first goal scorer predictions.
Yes, I don't think Roscommon are going to score a goal. Galway's defence, I think, will hold them out. So I'll be looking at, obviously, the Galway side, Damien Comer at 11-2, Barry McHugh 9-1. And I'd be moving closer towards Damien Comer at 11-2. I think he scored 2 goals the last day, and I think he'll get the space in the full forward line to be able to cause havoc. And Damien Comer for me at 11-2, first goal scorer. Man in the match. You'd be looking around. I'm going to go a double with Damien Comer because I think he's going to have a great game. If he scores goal and 3 or 4 points, he'll probably end up obviously on the winning side and as man of the match. So Damien Comer, I'm not too sure what he is for man of the match, but 11-2 for first goal scorer.
Paddy, what prices are those?
Yeah, it's 11-2 for the first goal, and Comer's 11-2 for the man of the match as well.
And what about your own predictions?
Yeah, I think a lot of what happens with Comer a lot of the time is he wins so much ball in there, and he does get so much attention that he actually creates space for the other forwards around him. So I think one of the best finishers in the Galway team is Ian Burke. He scored a goal as well the last day, and he played really, really well when he came on against Mayo. We're glad to see him get a start. So I think Ian Burke for the first goal, it's 7-1, might be a decent play. And man of the match, I'm going to go for a pretty big one. Sean Andy O'Cally gets his first. It's his first year in at Galway. He's played. He was brilliant at full back against Mayo. He was solid during the league. He was solid against Sligo as well. I just think if it's a tight game as well, there's a good chance he might stick out. I think he'll be around the 25-1 mark, and I'd say you could do worse than having a small few in him.
Well, that's it then. That game is on at 4 o'clock at Dr. Hyde Park on Sunday, clashing with Germany and Mexico. Joe, which one will you be watching?
I'll be definitely watching my Galway to overcome Roscommon on Sunday.
We actually spoke about the World Cup in part 1. We want to maybe get your thoughts on it, Joe, as well. Are you a true Gael who'll dismiss the tournament as utter tripe, or will you be tuning into some of the games?
No, I like watching soccer, and I'll be definitely looking at as many games as I can. It's my love for it has probably dwindled over the last couple of years with the amount of money involved in it. But no, I definitely will be involved watching. I love watching the likes of Brazil and all the players that they have and the quality and the skill. There'll obviously you'll have England being built up to win the World Cup like every year. It'd be interesting to see what type of team that actually comes out for England this year, because obviously, as usual, they're being tipped to do big things. But it's going to be very interesting. And it's great. It's sport, and I'll definitely be taking a keen look at it and trying to watching as many games as I can.
Do you have a fancy in the outright market?
I haven't really looked at it, but I'll be sticking with Brazil. They just know how to win the competitions. They have the best players in the world, and if Neymar can get anyway right, I'm not too sure. I haven't even seen reports will he even be able to play or will he be playing. But they have the most skillful players, and usually come World Cups they know how to win them as well. So I'd be looking at Brazil and what price they are. Are they big price? They're about
4-1, and just to fill you in, Neymar has been absolutely flying in the friendlies in the lead up to it, so it all bodes well for Joe Sheridan's big tip. And Aidan Fogarty also tipped Brazil in part 1. So on that bombshell, we'll wrap up. My thanks to Aidan Fogarty, who joined us in part 1 to preview the hurling action, and to Joe Sheridan, who joined us as always to talk football. Also thanks to Paddy Ahern from our sponsors at Paddy Power. We'll be back next week with another GAA Postcast, and if you enjoy listening to these podcasts, please rate, review and subscribe on iTunes.
Follow Paddy Power on Snapchat. The username is ThePaddyPower, and we promise there won't be any boring snaps about gigs, the weather or the gym.